Rodney Glen King III was an African-American taxi driver who became nationally known after being beaten by Los Angeles Police Department officers, following a high-speed car chase on March 3, 1991. A witness, George Holliday, videotaped much of the beating from his balcony, and sent the footage to local news station KTLA. The footage shows 4 officers surrounding King, several of them striking him repeatedly, while other officers stood by. Parts of the footage were aired around the world, and raised public concern about police treatment of minorities in the United States. 4 officers were charged with assault with a deadly weapon and use of excessive force. 3 were acquitted of all charges. The jury acquitted the 4th of assault with a deadly weapon but failed to reach a verdict on the use of excessive force. The jury deadlocked at 8-4 in favor of acquittal at the state level. The acquittals are generally considered to have triggered the 1992 Los Angeles riots, in which 55 people were killed and over 2,000 were injured, ending only when the California National Guard was called in. The acquittals also led to the federal government's obtaining grand jury indictments for violations of King's civil rights. The trial of the 4 in a federal district court ended on April 16, 1993, with 2 of the officers being found guilty and subsequently imprisoned. The other 2 were acquitted again. Early life. King was born in Sacramento, California, the son of Rodney King and Odessa King. He and his 4 siblings grew up in Altadena, California. King's father died in 1984 at the age of 42. In November 1989, King robbed a store in Monterey Park, California. He threatened to hit the Korean store owner with an iron bar, then hit him with a pole. King stole $200 in cash during the robbery and was caught, convicted and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. He was released after serving 1 year of the sentence. King had 3 daughters, one by Carmen Simpson when he was a teenager, and one by each of his 2 wives. Both of King's marriages, to Danetta Lyles and Crystal Waters, ended in divorce. Incident: high-speed chase. Early on the morning of March 3, 1991, King, with 2 passengers, Brian Talon and Freddie Helms, were driving a 1987 Hyundai XL or a Mitsubishi Praise west on the Foothill Freeway in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. Prior to driving onto the Foothill Freeway, the 3 men had spent the night watching a basketball game and drinking at a friend's house in Los Angeles. 5 hours after the incident, King's blood alcohol level was found to be slightly below the legal limit. This suggests that his blood alcohol level may have fallen from 0.19% while he was driving, in which case it would have been more than twice the legal driving limit in California. At 12:30 a.m., officers Tim and Melanie Singer, husband and wife members of the California Highway Patrol, noticed King's car speeding on the freeway. The officers pursued King, and the pursuit attained high speeds, while King refused to pull over. King would later admit he attempted to outrun the police at dangerously high speeds because a charge of driving under the influence would violate his parole for a previous robbery conviction. King exited the freeway near the Hanson Dam Recreation Center and the pursuit continued through residential surface streets, at speeds ranging from 55 to 80 miles per hour. By this point, several police cars and a police helicopter had joined in this pursuit. After approximately 18 miles, officers cornered King in his car at the corner of Foothill Boulevard and Osborne Street. The first 5 LAPD officers to arrive at the scene were Stacy Kuhn, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, Theodore Brisino, and Rolando Solano. Confrontation officer Tim Singer ordered King and his 2 passengers to exit the vehicle and to lie face down on the ground. Brian Talon was manhandled, kicked, stomped, taunted and threatened. Freddie Helms was hit in the head while lying on the ground. Helms was treated for a laceration on the top of his head. His bloody baseball cap was turned over to police. King remained in the car. When he finally did emerge, he was reported to have giggled, patted the ground, and waved to the police helicopter overhead. King then grabbed his buttocks, which Officer Melanie Singer took to mean King reaching for a weapon. King was later found to be unarmed. She drew her pistol and pointed it at King, ordering him to lie on the ground. Singer approached, gun drawn, preparing to effect an arrest. At that point LAPD Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, the ranking officer at the scene, told Singer that the LAPD was taking tactical command of the situation. He ordered all officers to holster the weapons. LAPD officers are taught to approach a suspect without his/her gun drawn, as there is a risk that any suspect may gain control of it if an officer gets too close. Kuhn then ordered the 4 other LAPD officers at the scene, Brasino, Powell, Solano, and Wind, to subdue and handcuff King using a technique called a swarm. Quote, "This involves multiple officers grabbing a suspect with empty hands, in order to quickly overcome potential resistance. As 4 officers attempted to restrain King, King resisted by standing to remove officers Powell and Brasino from his back. The officers later testified that they believed King was under the influence of the dissociative drug phencyclidine, although King's toxicology tested negative for the drug. Beating with batons. The Holliday video. King was twice tasered by Kuhn. This marks the approximate start of the George Holliday videotape of the incident. In the tape, King is seen on the ground. He rises and rushes toward Powell, as argued in court, either to attack Powell or to flee, but regardless, King and Powell both collided in the rush. Taser wire can be seen on King's body. Officer Powell strikes King with his baton, and King is knocked to the ground. Powell strikes King several more times with his baton. Brasino moves in, attempting to stop Powell from striking again, and Powell stands back. Kuhn reportedly said, "That's enough." King then rises again, to his knees. Powell and Wind are then seen hitting King with the batons. Kuhn acknowledged ordering the continued use of batons, directing Powell and Wind to strike King with power strokes. Quote, according to Kuhn, Powell and Wind used bursts of power strokes, then backed off. In the videotape, King continues to try to stand again. Kuhn orders the officers to hit his joints, hit the wrists, hit his elbows, hit his knees, hit his ankles. Officers Wind, Brasino, and Powell attempt numerous baton strikes on King, resulting in some misses but with 33 blows hitting King, plus 6 kicks. The officers again swarm King, but this time a total of 8 officers are involved in the swarm. King is then placed in handcuffs and cord cuffs, restraining his arms and legs. King is dragged on his abdomen to the side of the road to await the arrival of emergency medical rescue. George Holliday's videotape of the incident was shot from his apartment near the intersection of Foothill Boulevard and Osborne Street in Lakeview Terrace. 2 days later, Holliday contacted the police about his videotape of the incident, but they ignored him. He then went to KTLA television with his videotape, although the station edited out 10 seconds of the video before the image was in focus. That showed an extremely blurry shot of King charging at the officers. The cut footage would later be cited by members of the jury as essential to the acquittal of the officers. The footage as a whole became an instant media sensation. Portions of it were aired numerous times, and it turned what would otherwise have been a violent, but soon forgotten, encounter between the Los Angeles police and an uncooperative suspect into one of the most widely watched and discussed incidents of its kind. The Holliday video of the Rodney King arrest is a fairly early example of modern surveillance, wherein private citizens, assisted by increasingly sophisticated, affordable video equipment, record significant, sometimes historic events. Several copwatch organizations subsequently appeared throughout the United States to safeguard against police abuse, including an umbrella group, October 22 Coalition to Stop Police Brutality. Post-arrest events. Aftermath. King was taken to Pacifica Hospital after his arrest, where he was found to have suffered a fractured facial bone, a broken right ankle, and multiple bruises and lacerations. In a negligence claim filed with the city, King alleged he had suffered 11 skull fractures, permanent brain damage, broken kidney failure, emotional and physical trauma. Blood and urine samples taken from King 5 hours after his arrest showed that he would have been intoxicated under California law at the time of his arrest. The tests also showed traces of marijuana. Pacifica Hospital nurses reported that the officers who accompanied King openly joked and bragged about the number of times King had been hit. Officers also obtained King's identification from his clothes pockets at the time. King sued the city and a jury awarded him $3.8 million as well as $1.7 million in attorney's fees. Charges against King for driving while intoxicated and evading arrest were never pursued. District Attorney Ira Reiner felt there was insufficient evidence for prosecution, and successor Gil Garcetti felt that too much time had passed to charge King with evading arrest, while also mentioning that the statute of limitations on drunk driving had passed. Criminal charges against police officers. After 4 days of grand jury testimony, the Los Angeles District Attorney charged officers Kuhn, Powell, Brissino and Wind with use of excessive force on March 14, 1991. Sergeant Kuhn, only having deployed the taser, was, as the supervisory officer at the scene, charged with willfully permitting and failing to take action to stop the unlawful assault. On August 22, 1991, the California Court of Appeals removed the initial judge, Bernard Kamens, after it was proved Kamens told prosecutors, "You can trust me." The court also later granted a change of venue to the city of Simi Valley in neighboring Ventura County, citing potential contamination due to saturated media coverage. Christopher Commission. Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley created the Independent Commission on the Los Angeles Police Department, also known as the Christopher Commission, in April 1991. Led by Attorney Warren Christopher, it was created to conduct a full and fair examination of the structure and operation of the LAPD, including its recruitment and training practices, internal disciplinary system, and citizen complaint system. Los Angeles riots and the aftermath. Though few people at first considered race an important factor in the case, including Rodney King's attorney, Stephen Lerman, the sensitizing effect of the Holliday videotape was at the time stirring deep resentment in Los Angeles, as well as other major cities in the United States. The officers' jury consisted of Ventura County residents, 10 white, 1 Latino, 1 Asian. Lead prosecutor Terry White was African American. On April 29, 1992, the jury acquitted 3 of the officers but could not agree on one of the charges against Powell. Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley said, "The jury's verdict will not blind us to what we saw on that videotape. The men who beat Rodney King do not deserve to wear the uniform of the LAPD." President George H.W. Bush said, "Viewed from outside the trial, it was hard to understand how the verdict could possibly square with the video. Those civil rights leaders with whom I met were stunned. And so was I, and so was Barbara, and so were my kids." The acquittals are considered to have triggered the Los Angeles riots of 1992. By the time the police, the Army, Marines and National Guard restored order. The riots had caused 53 deaths, 2,383 injuries, more than 7,000 fires, damage to 3,100 businesses, and nearly $1 billion in financial losses. Smaller riots occurred in other cities such as San Francisco, Las Vegas in neighboring Nevada, and as far east as Atlanta, Georgia. A minor riot erupted on Yonge Street in Toronto, Ontario, Canada as a result of the acquittals. During the riots, King made a television appearance in which he said, "Can we all get along?" The widely quoted line has been often misquoted as, "Can we all just get along?" or "Can't we all just get along?" Federal trial of officers. After the acquittals and the riots, the United States Department of Justice sought indictments for violations of King's civil rights. On May 7, federal prosecutors began presenting evidence to a Los Angeles grand jury. On August 4, the grand jury returned indictments against the three officers for willfully and intentionally using unreasonable force, and against Sergeant Kuhn for willfully permitting and failing to take action to stop the unlawful assault on King. Based on these indictments, a trial of the four officers in the United States District Court for the Central District of California began on February 25, 1993. The federal trial focused more on the incident. On March 9 of the 1993 trial, King took the witness stand and described to the jury the events as he remembered them. The jury found Officer Lawrence Powell and Sergeant Stacy Kuhn guilty, and they were subsequently sentenced to 32 months in prison, while Timothy Wind and Theodore Briseno were acquitted of all charges. During the 3-hour sentencing hearing, the federal trial judge, John Davies, accepted much of the defense version of the beating. He strongly criticized King, who he said provoked the officers' initial actions. Judge Davies stated that only the final 6 Sabaton blows by Powell were unlawful. The first 55 seconds of the videotaped portion of the incident, during which the vast majority of the blows were delivered, was within the law because the officers were attempting to subdue a suspect who was resisting efforts to take him into custody. Davies found that King's provocative behavior began with his remarkable consumption of alcoholic beverage and continued through a high-speed chase, refusal to submit to police orders, and an aggressive charge toward Powell. Davies made several findings in support of the officer's version of events. He concluded that Officer Powell never intentionally struck King in the head, and Powell's baton blow that broke King's leg was not illegal because King was still resisting and rolling around on the ground, and breaking bones in resistant suspects is permissible under police policy. Mitigation cited by the judge in determining the length of the prison sentence included the suffering the officers had undergone because of the extensive publicity the case had received, heavy legal bills that were still unpaid, the impending loss of their careers as police officers, the higher risks of abuse while in prison, and the having already been subjected to 2 trials. The judge acknowledged that having 2 such trials did not legally constitute double jeopardy, but nonetheless it raised the specter of unfairness. These mitigations were critical to the validity of the sentences imposed, because federal sentencing guidelines called for much longer prison terms in the range of 70 to 87 months. The low sentences were controversial and were appealed. In a 1994 ruling, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit rejected all the grounds cited by Judge Davies and extended the terms. The case was then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Both Mr. Kuhn and Mr. Powell were released from prison while they appealed the Ninth Circuit's ruling, having served their original 30-month sentences with time off for good behavior. On June 14, 1996, the High Court reversed the lower court in a ruling unanimous in its most important aspects, which gave a strong endorsement to judicial discretion, even under sentencing guidelines intended to produce uniformity. Later life, King successfully sued the city and won $3.8 million. King invested a portion of his settlement in a record label, Straight Alta Paz Records, which went out of business. He later went on to write a book and make a movie about his life. King was subject to further arrests and convictions for driving violations after the 1991 incident. On August 21, 1993, he crashed his car into a block wall in downtown Los Angeles. He was convicted of driving under the influence of alcohol, fined, entered a rehabilitation program, and was placed on probation. In July 1995, he was arrested by Alhambra police after hitting his wife with his car and knocking her to the ground. He was sentenced to 90 days in jail after being convicted of hit and run. On August 27, 2003, King was arrested again for speeding and running a red light while under the influence of alcohol. He failed to yield to police officers and slammed his vehicle into a house, breaking his pelvis. On March 3, 2011, the 20th anniversary of the beating, the LAPD stopped King for driving erratically and issued him a citation for driving with an expired license. This arrest led to his February 2012 misdemeanor conviction for reckless driving. On November 29, 2007, while riding home on his bicycle, King was shot in the face, arms, and back with pellets from a shotgun. He reported that the attackers were a man and a woman who demanded his bicycle and shot him when he rode away. Police described the wounds as looking as if they came from birdshot. In May 2008, King checked into the Pasadena Recovery Center in Pasadena, California, where he filmed as a cast member of Season 2 of Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, which premiered in October 2008. Dr. Drew Pinsky, who runs the facility, showed concern for King's lifestyle and said King would die unless his addiction was treated. He also appeared on Sober House, a celebrity rehab spin-off focusing on a sober living environment. During his time on Celebrity Rehab in Sober House, King worked on his addiction and what he said was lingering trauma of the beating. He and Pinsky physically retraced King's path from the night of his beating, eventually reaching the spot where it happened, the site of the Children's Museum of Los Angeles. King won a celebrity boxing match against ex-Chester City police officer Simon A. Uward on Friday, September 11, 2009, at the Ramada Philadelphia Airport in Essington, Pennsylvania. In 2009, King and other Celebrity Rehab alumni appeared as panel speakers to a new group of addicts at the Pasadena Recovery Center, marking 11 months of sobriety for him. His appearance was aired in the third season episode Triggers. On September 9, 2010, it was confirmed that King was going to marry Cynthia Kelly, who had been a juror in the civil suit he brought against the city of Los Angeles. The BBC quoted King commenting on his legacy. "Some people feel like I'm some kind of hero. Others hate me. They say I deserved it. Other people, I can hear them mocking me for when I called for an end to the destruction, like I'm a fool for believing in peace." Death. On the morning of June 17, 2012, King's fiancée Cynthia Kelly found him lying at the bottom of his swimming pool. Police in Rialto received a 911 call from Kelly at about 5:25 a. a.m. Responding officers found King at the bottom of the pool, removed him, and attempted to revive him. He was transferred by ambulance to Arrowhead Regional Medical Center in Colton, California, and was pronounced dead at the hospital at 6:11 a.m. The Rialto Police Department began a standard drowning investigation and stated there did not appear to be any foul play. On August 23, 2012, King's autopsy results were released, stating he died of accidental drowning, and that a combination of alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, and PCP found in his system were contributing factors. The effects of the drugs and alcohol, combined with the subject's heart condition, probably precipitated a cardiac arrhythmia, and the subject, thus incapacitated in the water, was unable to save himself. King had been a user of PCP. King is interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Los Angeles, California.